Let me tell you about a village called Ntoro, where the river sang and the ancestors watched. Everyone knew Ayo and Maramma. They were the perfect couple, they said, the ones blessed by the gods themselves. But perfection, my child, is often just a mask worn too long. On the night the truth shattered, thunder rolled across the sky like angry drums. The family gathering had turned dark. Relatives whispered, elders frowned, and Ayo, the humble woodcarver everyone praised, stood trembling with rage. "You have dishonored our marriage," he shouted at Maramma, his voice cutting through the storm. "You have made a fool of me before the entire village." The crowd gasped. Rain began to fall, cold and sharp. Maramma stood there, her face pale as moonlight, her hands shaking. She looked at her husband with eyes full of something nobody expected. Not guilt, not shame. Fear. "If you speak one more lie," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the thunder, "the ancestors will answer you themselves." The words hung in the air like smoke. And then, from the shrine behind them, the ancient gong rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Nobody had touched it. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the days when Ntoro believed in their happiness. The marketplace was always busy in the mornings. Women sold yams and palm oil. Children chased chickens between the stalls. And there, walking hand in hand, were Ayo and Maramma. "Look at them," the old women would say, smiling. "The ancestors truly blessed that union." Ayo would laugh at something Maramma said. She would rest her head on his shoulder. They moved through the village like dancers who knew every step. Everyone envied them. Everyone wanted what they had. But if you looked closely, if you watched Maramma's eyes when she thought no one was watching, you would see something else. A flicker of worry. A shadow of fear. In their home, hidden in the corner, sat a sealed calabash, dark clay, bound with sacred twine. Maramma's eyes would drift to it whenever Ayo turned away. Her fingers would tremble slightly. What was she hiding? That morning, as they returned from the market, a messenger arrived. Ayo's cousin Sefu was inviting them to the full moon family gathering. Maramma's smile disappeared completely. Ayo's workshop smelled of fresh wood and palm oil. Shavings covered the dirt floor like golden snow. He was carving a mask, his hands moving with the skill his father had taught him. A village elder entered and placed a heavy pouch on the workbench, payment for a commissioned shrine door. Ayo's eyes widened at the weight of it, more money than he'd seen in months. "Share it with your wife," the elder said kindly. "Maramma's healing work brings honor to your house, too." Ayo nodded and smiled, but when the elder left, his smile faded. He looked at the coins, then at his calloused hands. Why should he share what he earned with his sweat? Maramma's family was already wealthy. Her father was the village's chief healer. Pride whispered in his ear like smoke. "You are a man. You provide. This is yours." He hid the pouch beneath a loose floorboard. As he covered it with wood shavings, a crow landed on the windowsill. Its black eyes fixed on him. It tilted its head and spoke in a voice that made his skin crawl. "Truth breaks." Footsteps approached. Ayo's heart jumped. Maramma appeared in the doorway, carrying his afternoon meal. Her eyes went straight to where he'd hidden the coins. The healer's hut stood at the edge of the forest, where the ancient trees grew thick. Inside, herbs hung from the ceiling, filling the air with earth and medicine. Maramma knelt before Elder Ozioke, the oldest healer in Ntoro. "I cannot carry this secret much longer," Maramma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It burns inside me like hot coals." Ozioke's weathered hands touched Maramma's trembling ones. The old woman's eyes were clouded with age but sharp with wisdom. Child, secrets are like poison. They rot the soul before they rot the home. But if I speak, my family will be shamed. My father will never forgive me. The village will... The village will what? Ozioke interrupted gently. Judge you? They already whisper, child. I have heard them. Maramma looked up sharply. What do they say? That your smile is too bright, that perfect marriages do not exist, that something hides beneath your laughter. Maramma's breath caught. She glanced toward the doorway, then leaned closer. The calabash in my home holds something the ancestors forbade, something I rescued. When I should have let nature take its course. Ozioke's eyes widened. Before she could respond, both women felt something, a cold presence. A shadow fell across the doorway, though no one stood there. Something was listening. Something already knew. The village well was where gossip flowed as freely as water. Women gathered there each evening, filling their clay pots and filling their minds with rumors. Ayo came to draw water for his workshop. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but voices carried in the evening air, and his name caught his ear like a thorn. Maramma only married him for protection, one voice said. Her family needed a respectable husband after, well, you know. After what? Another asked. After that incident in the forest. Nobody speaks of it, but the elders remember. Ayo's hands tightened on the rope. His cousin Seifu appeared beside him, seeming to materialize from nowhere. They do not respect you, cousin, Seifu said softly, his voice like oil. They see you as the poor woodcarver who married above his station. They think Maramma's family bought her a husband. That's not true, Ayo said, but his voice wavered. Seifu smiled. Isn't it? Tell me, cousin, what do you truly know about your wife's past, about why her family was so eager to marry her off? The questions planted themselves in Ayo's mind like seeds in dark soil. I will expose her, Ayo muttered. At the gathering, the truth will come out. That night, Ayo returned home late. The house was dark, except for a single oil lamp burning in the corner. Maramma was already asleep, or pretending to be. Ayo moved quietly through the room. His eyes fell on the calabash. It sat in the same corner it always did, bound with sacred twine, sealed with red clay. He had never thought much about it before. Maramma said it contained herbs for healing, protection charms from her father. But now, in the darkness, with Seifu's poisoned words still fresh in his mind, he looked at it differently. As he stared, the calabash trembled, just slightly, just enough to make the ground beneath it whisper with movement. Ayo froze. It trembled again, then stopped. He heard Maramma's breathing change. She was awake. He turned and saw her sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and fixed on the calabash. She scrambled toward it and clutched it to her chest like a mother protecting a child. Don't, she whispered. Please, Ayo, don't touch it. What is in there? He demanded. She looked at him with those same fearful eyes he'd seen in the storm. Something you are not ready to understand. Not yet, she whispered to the calabash, rocking it gently. Please, not yet. Ayo's suspicion hardened into certainty. She was hiding something terrible. The festival came 3 nights before the full moon. The village square filled with dancers, drummers, and laughter. Torches burned bright against the dark sky. Children ran between the legs of adults, squealing with joy. Ayo and Maramma walked through the crowd, hand in hand, smiling for everyone who looked. But Ayo's grip was too tight. His fingers pressed into her palm like a warning. Maramma's smile stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. The perfect couple, someone shouted and others cheered. Ayo waved, Maramma nodded gracefully. They moved through the celebration like actors in a play they'd performed 100 times. But Maramma saw something others couldn't. Standing at the edge of the torchlight, barely visible in the shadows, was a child. Small, translucent, watching her with ancient eyes. A spirit child. Maramma's breath caught. The child pointed at Ayo, then placed a finger over his lips. Then it spoke, though its mouth didn't move. The words appeared directly in Maramma's mind. He will break what you hide. The gathering comes. Truth cannot sleep forever. Maramma stumbled. Ayo caught her, still smiling for the crowd. Are you well? He asked, his voice cold despite the gentle words. Yes, she lied. The spirit child vanished like smoke. The drums played on, the village danced, and the perfect couple continued their performance, neither knowing the other's breaking point was near. Deep in the forest, where the oldest trees grew and wise people feared to walk at night, Ayo met his cousin Sifu in a clearing lit by moonlight. She has been unfaithful, Sifu said, his voice smooth as honey and just as sticky. The whole village knows, but will not speak it to your face. They pity you. How do you know this? Ayo demanded, though part of him wanted desperately to believe it. It will make his anger righteous, his pride justified. I have proof, Sifu said, but it must come out at the gathering, in front of the elders and ancestors. Only then will she face proper judgment. What proof? The calabash, Sifu whispered. Whatever she hides in there is the evidence. Break it open during the gathering, and her shame will be exposed. Ayo's jaw tightened. Why do you help me? Sifu's smile widened. Because family honors family, and because, he paused, when you divorce her for her betrayal, her father's lands and healing knowledge will need a new family to inherit them. Her father grows old. He has no sons. There it was, the truth beneath the help. Sifu wanted inheritance, wanted power, wanted what Maramma's family had built over generations. But Ayo's pride blinded him. He only heard justification for his anger. Neither man noticed the masked figure watching from the trees, a forest spirit, ancient and patient, recording every word spoken in greed and pride. The next morning, Maramma walked to the ancestral forest alone. She needed guidance, needed wisdom. The weight of her secret was crushing her. As she reached the sacred grove where offerings were made, mist rolled in thick and cold. From within it, a figure emerged. Tall, wearing a mask of wood and bone, eyes that glowed like embers. The forest spirit. Your husband walks the path of pride, the spirit said, its voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. His cousin feeds him lies like poison, and your silence feeds it all. I cannot speak, Maramma said, falling to her knees. If I reveal what I've done, what I'm protecting, they will call it forbidden. They will say I defied the ancestors. And did you not? The spirit asked. Maramma's tears fell on the sacred ground. I saved a life, a spirit life that would have been lost. Was that wrong? The spirit tilted its head. The calabash holds what should have returned to the spirit world. You bound it to this realm out of compassion, but compassion without wisdom creates chaos. The spirit knelt and pressed its palm to Maramma's forehead. She felt heat, then cold, then something like light burning into her skin. When the spirit removed his hand, a mark remained, ash gray and glowing faintly. When the truth comes, this mark will prove you acted with honor. But first, the storm must break. The mist swallowed the spirit whole. Maramma touched her forehead. The mark was invisible now, but she felt it burning beneath her skin. Ayo worked in his shop with fury. His tools bit into the wood with violent precision. He was carving something he'd never shown Maramma. Something dark. It was a figure of her. Beautiful, yes, but split down the middle. Cracked. Broken in two. When Maramma entered his evening meal, she stopped cold. Her eyes found the carving immediately. What is that? She asked, her voice small. What you've made of us, broken, divided, a lie. Ayo, please. I don't trust you, he said, finally meeting her eyes. I don't know who you are anymore. Maybe I never did. Maramma set the food down carefully, her hands shaking. Ayo, you are being poisoned by lies, husband. Sifu is not your friend. He wants enough. Ayo shouted, standing abruptly. Always excuses, always secrets. I'm tired of living in a house of shadows. Maramma's tears fell silently. She turned to leave, but as she reached the doorway, a sound made them both freeze. A crack. They turned to see the carved figure of Maramma split completely in two, down the center, clean and perfect, as if an invisible blade had cut it. Neither of them had touched it. Maramma ran from the workshop. Ayo stared at the broken carving, his confidence wavering for the first time. What had he done? The village square filled with people as the elders made their announcement. The full moon gathering would be held in 3 days. All family disputes, all hidden grievances, all secrets must be brought before the ancestors. This is sacred law, the head elder declared, his voice carrying across the crowd. What is spoken during the gathering is heard by those who came before us. Lies spoken under the moonlight bring ancestral punishment. Truth spoken brings healing. Maramma felt the words like stones in her chest. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. Ayo sat on the opposite side, his chin raised, his jaw set. He looked confident, righteous, ready. Their eyes met across the crowd. In that moment, both saw something that made their blood run cold. Neither was backing down. Neither would surrender. Seifu appeared beside Ayo, whispering something that made Ayo nod firmly. Elder Ozioke appeared beside Maramma, her weathered hand gripping the younger woman's arm. You must speak first, she whispered urgently, before he does, before pride destroys you both. But Maramma shook her head. I cannot. Then the ancestors will force your hand, Ozioke warned. The elder finished the announcement. 3 days. Prepare your hearts. The full moon reveals all. Ayo smiled. Maramma trembled. The gathering would change everything. 2 days before the gathering, disaster struck unexpectedly. A neighbor's child, no more than 5 years old, ran into Ayo and Maramma's home chasing a runaway chicken. In the chaos, the child stumbled, knocked into the calabash. It tipped, rolled, and cracked against the stone floor. Maramma screamed, diving toward it, but it was too late. A thin line split the clay from top to bottom. Light poured from inside. Not firelight, not sunlight. Something else. Something ancient and alive. And from within that light came a voice. Small, young, achingly sad. Mother, Mother, please. The neighbor rushed in, grabbed her child and fled. The chicken squawked and escaped. Maramma knelt on the floor, holding the cracked calabash, tears streaming down her face as she whispered desperate prayers. The light faded. The voice went silent, but the damage was done. Ayo stood in the doorway. He had heard everything, seen everything. What was that? He asked, his voice deadly quiet. Maramma looked up at him, her face wet with tears and terror. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Why did it call you mother? She opened her mouth to explain, but no words came. How could she explain something even she didn't fully understand? How could she make him see what she'd done was mercy, not sin? Answer me, Ayo shouted. But Maramma just held the broken calabash and wept. The next morning, Ayo went to the fishermen's docks. Men gathered there each day to mend nets and share news. Today, Ayo needed witnesses, needed support, needed the village to hear his side before the gathering. "My wife has deceived me," he announced loudly. "She hides spirits in our home, calls them her children, practices forbidden rituals." The men stopped working. Eyes turned toward him. "The calabash in our home," Ayo continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "It holds something dark, something she refuses to explain. At the gathering, I will demand the truth before the ancestors." Some men nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. Ayo's words felt too harsh, too public, too cruel. One old fisherman spoke up. "Brother, perhaps you should speak with her privately first. The gathering is sacred. Once words are spoken there, they cannot be taken back." "I'm done with privacy. I'm done with secrets. She will face judgment." His voice carried across the water. People turned. Whispers spread like ripples. What Ayo didn't see was Elder Ozioge standing behind the fish market. She had heard everything. Her face was grave, her eyes filled with sadness. She had warned them both. Now the storm would break, and there would be no shelter from it. "Pride," she whispered to herself, "the destroyer of kings and beggars alike." Elder Ozioke climbed the mountain path to the ancient shrine. Her old legs ached, but she moved with urgency. At the summit, where the ancestor stone stood in a circle, she found Maramma kneeling in prayer. "Child," said Ozioke firmly, "you must speak the truth before Ayo destroys you both." Maramma looked up, her eyes red from crying. "I cannot. If I reveal what I did, they will call it forbidden. They will banish me. And if you stay silent, your husband's pride will tear down everything you've built. Which fate is worse?" Maramma's hands trembled. She reached into her garment and pulled out a small piece of cloth. Inside was ash from the broken calabash. "5 years ago," she began, her voice shaking, "I was gathering herbs in the deep forest. I found a spirit child. It had been rejected from its realm, cast out to fade. It was dying. A spirit can die, you know. I heard its cries." "So you bound it to the calabash," Ozioke said heavily. "I gave it shelter," Maramma corrected. "I sang the old songs, fed it with prayers. I saved its life." "That is forbidden for a reason, child. Spirit children belong between worlds. By binding it here, you trapped it." Maramma wept. "I know, but I couldn't let it die." The shrine torches suddenly flickered wildly, though there was no wind. Both women felt it. A presence. A warning. "The ancestors are listening," Ozioke whispered. "They already know. At the gathering, they will judge. Prepare yourself." The night before the gathering, Ayo and Maramma lay in their bed, backs to each other. The silence between them was thick enough to drown in. Neither slept, neither spoke. The calabash sat in the corner, its cracks sealed temporarily with clay and prayer, but light still seeped from the edges, pulsing, alive, waiting. Ayo closed his eyes and fell into uneasy dreams. He stood in a vast darkness. Before him appeared the masked forest spirit, towering and terrible. "Blind with pride," the spirit spoke, its voice shaking the dream world. "You see only what your wounded ego shows you. Tomorrow, you will speak words you cannot unsay. You will break what cannot be repaired. She is the liar, Ayo shouted in the dream. She is the one who showed mercy when the world showed none, the spirit interrupted. Who saved life while you count coins? Who bears secrets to protect while you bear secrets to wound? The dream shattered. Ayo woke gasping, his chest tight with fear. But when the fear faded, anger returned. Hotter, stronger. Tomorrow, he told himself, tomorrow she will face justice. Across the room, Maramma lay awake, staring at the calabash. The spirit child's voice whispered in her mind, "Mother, what will happen to me?" "I don't know," Maramma whispered back. "I don't know." Dawn came too quickly. The sacred family courtyard was prepared. Torches lined the circular space. The elders sat on carved wooden stools beneath the ancient Iroko tree. Relatives filled the benches, their faces solemn. This was not entertainment. This was judgment. The full moon hung low and heavy in the sky, watching like an unblinking eye. Drums began their slow, steady rhythm. The head elder stood, raising his staff. "We gather under the gaze of those who came before," he announced. "Tonight, truth must be spoken. Lies will be punished. The ancestors are listening." Thunder rumbled in the distance, though the sky was clear. The head elder's eyes swept across the gathering. "Who comes forward first?" Ayo stood immediately, his chest puffed with righteous anger. Maramma's breath caught. She gripped the edge of her seat. "I come forward," Ayo declared, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "I bring accusation against my wife." The drums stopped. The silence was absolute. The ancestors leaned in. The truth was about to explode. Ayo stepped into the center of the courtyard, every eye fixed on him. He felt powerful, vindicated. Finally, he would expose her. Finally, everyone would see. "Maramma has hidden shameful secrets from me," he began, his voice strong. "She practices forbidden rituals, binds spirits that should be free. She calls them her children while denying me true heirs. She mocks our marriage with her deceptions." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maramma's father stood, but the head elder gestured for him to sit. "These are serious accusations," the elder said gravely. "Do you have proof?" "The calabash in our home!" Ayo shouted, pointing at Maramma. "She guards it like treasure, speaks to it in whispers. It glows with unnatural light. When it cracked, I heard a voice call her mother. What woman hides her child unless that child is born of sin?" The crowd erupted in whispers. Maramma sat frozen, her face pale as death, not from guilt, from terror of what the truth would unleash. Elder Ozioke stood. "The accused must speak." Maramma slowly rose. Her legs shook. Her lips trembled. When she opened her mouth to speak, no sound came. That's when the wind began. Soft at first, then stronger, then violent, howling around the courtyard like a living thing. Torches flickered, people grabbed their clothing. "The ancestors are angry!" someone cried. The calabash in Maram's hands began to shake violently. The wind grew stronger, whipping through the courtyard with a voice of its own. Dust swirled. Torches bent nearly horizontal. The elders gripped their staffs, their faces turned toward the sky. "Speak, daughter," the head elder commanded, his voice barely audible over the wind. "The ancestors demand truth." Maramma clutched the calabash to her chest. Inside, the spirit child was crying. She could feel it, could hear it in her mind, terrified, trapped, begging for release. "Release me!" The voice echoed, no longer just in her mind, but bleeding into the physical world. "Mother, please, release me." The crowd heard it. Everyone heard it. Shock and fear spread like fire. Ayo's eyes widened. He took a step back. This was beyond what he'd imagined. This was real, tangible, undeniable. "What have you done?" Ayo whispered, his confidence crumbling. Maramma looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "I showed mercy, something you've forgotten how to do." She moved toward the center of the courtyard, holding the calabash out. "You want the truth? You want to see what I've been hiding?" "Maramma, no!" Elder Ozioke shouted. "Not like this!" But before Maramma could act, Ayo lunged forward. His pride and fear collided. He grabbed the calabash from her hands. "If you won't open it," he snarled, "I will." Maramma screamed, "No, you don't understand what you're—" Ayo raised the calabash high and smashed it on the stone floor. The world went white. Light exploded from the shattered calabash. Not ordinary light. This was pure spirit energy, ancient and blinding. The crowd threw their hands over their eyes. The wind roared like a wounded beast. From within the light, something emerged. A child. Small, translucent, glowing like moonlight on water. It looked no more than 5 years old. Its eyes were ancient, filled with wisdom and sorrow. The spirit child. It hovered above the broken clay pieces, looking around at the shocked faces. Then its gaze settled on Maramma. "Mother," it said, its voice echoing through the courtyard. Everyone heard it clearly now. "Why did he break my home?" Maramma fell to her knees, weeping. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to protect you." The crowd recoiled, some in fear, some in awe. Ayo stumbled backward, his face drained of all color. What is that?" someone whispered. The mountain oracle, a figure who had sat silent until now, slowly rose from her seat. She was ancient, her white hair flowing like river water. Her eyes could see beyond the physical realm. She walked toward the spirit child with slow, deliberate steps. The child turned to face her. "Little one," the oracle said gently, "tell us your story. Tell us why you were bound to this realm." The spirit child looked at Maramma, then back at the oracle, and it began to speak. The spirit child's voice filled the courtyard, soft yet impossible to ignore. Every person stood frozen, listening. "I was cast out," the child said simply. "In the spirit realm, I was different, flawed. They said I did not belong. They sent me here to fade into nothing." The oracle nodded. "Go on, little one." "I wandered the forest growing weaker. I called for help, but spirits do not come for those already judged. I was alone. I was dying." The child turned to Maramma. Then she heard me. Maramma's tears flowed freely now. "She sang to me," the spirit child continued, "fed me with prayers and kindness. She gave me shelter in the calabash, bound with protection songs. She saved my life when my own kind abandoned me." The crowd's whispers shifted, no longer accusatory, now confused, uncertain. The oracle turned to face the gathering. Maramma performed a forbidden act, yes, but she did so with pure intention. She saw a life in danger and chose mercy over law. She turned to Ayo, her eyes piercing. "And you, husband, you have been fed lies by those with greedy hearts." Seifu tried to slip away into the crowd, but 2 elders blocked his path. "This cousin of yours," the oracle said, pointing at Seifu, "speak truth. Why did you poison your kinsman's mind?" Seifu's face went pale. The ancestors were listening. A lie now would bring divine punishment. He had no choice but to confess. Seifu stood in the center of the courtyard now, trapped by the elder staffs and the ancestors' invisible gaze. His earlier confidence had evaporated like morning dew. "Speak," the oracle commanded, "or the ancestors will pull the truth from your throat themselves." Seifu's mouth opened and closed. Finally, words spilled out. I needed the inheritance. Maramma's father has no sons. If she were divorced, disgraced, the healing lands would pass to the next male relative. Me. The crowd gasped. Maramma's father stood, his face twisted with rage and betrayal. You used my pride, Ayo whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. Yes, Seifu shouted, his composure breaking. You were so easy to manipulate. Your wounded pride, your jealousy of her family's status, I barely had to push. The oracle turned to Ayo. Her eyes held no mercy. And you, woodcarver, you let pride blind you. You chose to believe lies because they justified your anger. You broke a sacred vessel, destroyed a shelter built with love, all because you needed to feel superior to your wife. Ayo fell to his knees, the weight of his actions crashing down on him like a collapsing roof. The spirit child was innocent, the oracle continued. Maramma's only crime was compassion, and you, driven by pride and poisoned by greed, shattered both. The spirit child pointed at Ayo, its small finger glowing. He tried to break destiny itself. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the ground. The sky above the courtyard swirled with dark clouds, though no rain fell. The air crackled with energy, and then they came. The ancestors. They appeared as shadows at first, then solidified into translucent figures standing at the edges of the courtyard. Old warriors, ancient healers, grandmothers who had died generations ago. They formed a circle around the gathering. Everyone felt their presence. Some wept, some trembled. No one dared speak. The oldest ancestor, a woman whose face was carved from starlight, stepped forward. Her voice was everywhere. We have heard all that was spoken. We have seen all that was hidden. Now, judgment. She turned to Seifu. You who poisoned kinship for gold, you will lose what you coveted. The lands you sought will never know your footsteps. Your name will be forgotten by your own children. Seifu collapsed, weeping. The ancestor turned to Ayo. You who valued pride over love, you sought to expose your wife, but instead exposed your own hollow heart. You will lose what you valued most. What is that? Ayo asked, his voice breaking. The admiration of this village. From this day, you are the man who broke sacred bonds, the man who destroyed mercy with his pride. Until you learn humility and rebuild what you've broken, you will carry this shame. The ancestor's judgment fell on him like chains, invisible but crushing. And when you have truly learned, the ancestor continued, you may begin again, but not here, not now. Ayo bowed his head, accepting his fate. The ancestor turned to Maramma, and the courtyard held its collective breath. What judgment awaited her? But the ancient woman's expression softened. Stand, daughter. Maramma rose shakily. You broke a law made by men, yes, but you followed a higher law, the law of mercy, the law of compassion. The ancestor gestured to the spirit child. You saved life when you could have walked past. You bore shame and secrecy to protect innocence. The spirit child floated to Maramma, its small hand touching her face. However, you too must learn. Fears kept in fear become weapons for the cruel. Had you spoken truth earlier, with courage instead of terror, much pain could have been avoided. Maramma bowed her head. I know. I was afraid. Fear is not evil, but it cannot rule you. The ancestor raised her hand, and the mark on Maramma's forehead glowed. This mark proves your honor. It was placed by the forest spirit who witnessed your mercy. Let all see it now. The invisible mark became visible, a symbol of protection and compassion glowing on her skin. But the biggest revelation was still to come. The ancestors' gaze swept across both Ayo and Maramma. There is one more truth that must be spoken about your marriage itself. The crowd leaned in. This union was never born of love. It was arranged, forced by families who wanted to merge a woodcarver's craft with a healer's knowledge. Both of you wore masks. Both of you pretended happiness while dying inside. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Maramma's father looked away, shame on his face. Ayo's mother covered her mouth. You were both victims, victims of expectation, of tradition without wisdom. You married for duty, not for love. And so, the foundation was cracked from the beginning. Ayo and Maramma looked at each other for the first time with true understanding. Both had been trapped. Both had been performing. The perfect couple was the greatest lie of all. The ancestor raised both hands, and the courtyard fell into absolute silence. Even the wind stopped. The marriage is broken and cannot be mended, but destinies remain. Maramma, approach. Maramma stepped forward, the spirit child floating beside her. You were chosen long ago, before this marriage, before these troubles. The spirits marked you as a seer, one who walks between worlds, one who hears what others cannot. Elder Ozioke gasped softly. She had suspected but never confirmed it. The calabash was your first test. You passed. You chose mercy over fear. Now you will serve as this village's next oracle. The spirit child will be your guide, finally free to serve its true purpose. The spirit child smiled for the first time. Its form grew brighter, more solid. It transformed from a trapped, frightened thing into something powerful and beautiful. And Ayo, someone from the crowd called out. The ancestor turned to him. Ayo will walk the path of humility. He will leave this village and serve the elders in the mountain temple. There, he will learn what pride destroyed. If, after 7 seasons, he has truly changed, he may return, not as Ayo's mother. That bond is severed, but as a man reborn. Ayo nodded slowly. He looked at Maramma one final time. I'm sorry, he whispered. Maramma nodded. So am I. They had both lost, but perhaps in losing, they could finally find themselves. Dawn broke over in Toro as the gathering finally ended. The ancestors faded like mist. The villagers returned to their homes, forever changed by what they'd witnessed. Ayo packed a small bag. His workshop would be given to a younger cousin. His name would be remembered as a cautionary tale. But as he walked the path towards the mountain temple, something unexpected happened. His chest felt lighter. The weight of pretending was gone. He was free. Maramma stood in the shrine, now wearing the oracle's robes. The spirit child, no longer trapped, hovered beside her as a guide and companion. Her father approached, tears in his eyes. Forgive me, he said. I forced you into a life you never wanted. I forgive you, but I will choose my own path from now on. He nodded and walked away. Elder Ozioke placed a wrinkled hand on Maramma's shoulder. You will be a great seer. The ancestors chose well. In the village square, children played. Vendors sold their goods. Life continued, but everyone who passed the shrine whispered the same lesson. A perfect smile can hide a storm, but storms always reveal the truth. Years later, when villagers gathered around fires, they would tell this story. They would warn against pride, against forced marriages, against hiding truth in fear. And they would end it the same way. The truth you hide in silence will one day speak louder than drums.
If you enjoyed our story, please like, subscribe, and share.